I'm Rich Mahlerwein. Welcome to my talk on Checklist.conf and using it for increasing your fame and fortune. Wait. Scratch that. That's not exactly what this is about anymore. Obviously, Checklist.conf is involved, but since I first wrote this talk quite a while ago, there's no UI to do all this stuff inside Splunk, and the health check items actually work reasonably well. So, instead of Checklist.conf specifically, this is really just on health check items. So let's go ahead and fix the title of this and continue on as we were. As I just said, my name's Rich Mahlerwein. I am a member of the Splunk Trust. I have been since 2015. I think that's my thing today. I live in northern Wisconsin with my wife and two beautiful daughters, and I work on a lot of Splunk stuff. I also work for SideView, which we have a commercial app that's built on top of Splunk. And this is part of the driving force behind why I'm giving this talk, to help you folks do some of the things we do that make life easier for our users. But that's not really the point of this talk. Really, the point is to just show you how to use Checklist.conf in your own app. So why do we need to do this? The simple answer is apps break. People get confused about stuff. Things don't work right. Data stops coming in. And then the admins who don't know our app or any other app are trying to figure out what's wrong with it. Some of the dashboards work, some don't. They'll have to go in and figure out if is it missing source types, or what's going on, right? So, stuff happens. And what we need to do, though, is let the users help themselves and figure this out. At least to a large extent, or when it's possible or reasonably easy, why not just make it easy for your users? As I mentioned, I do work for SideView. This does give us a commercial advantage, or at least removes commercial disadvantages, however you'd want. So we have a free 90-day trial, and it has to work right. For the most part, it either has to work or you have to let the user know what they need to do to fix it. It needs to be kind of user-friendly in that way. And we found using Checklist.conf helps us a lot and helps admins and helps everyone else. Going to quickly cover over a list of what the different items are. For the most part, you need to do the yellow, the green, the orange, and maybe the blue too. You can read this particular slide and it'll really tell you most of what you need to know. I do say that you'll need to include the search and the title and an ID, because if you don't have any of those, well, what was the point, right? You definitely do need the description. The description, failure text, and suggested action, I'll show you where those show up at. You should always include them simply from the view of it's good information for them. Even if you say that, suggested action is call us for support or whatever it is you're trying to do. There are a few drawbacks to using the built-in monitoring console checklist runner. It just has some bad things going for it. I think it needs a little more love. I believe recently it was given a kind of an overhaul, so with any luck, they'll just continue that. There's a whole list here. You can read it. I'm just documenting it so that if you get caught with any of those, you'll know it's just the way it is, right? One or two that are really important, though, is that there's only one field that can be the drill down. Right? So if you have multiple drill downs, only the first one works. The others are just ignored. But that field can be anything. The docs are wrong here too a lot, and that's really frustrating. It's not the docs team's fault though. The spec files are handled by the actual programmers and developers, and so the docs team just passes those through and shows them. But I've reported all of these problems that I found in the docs, and I'm sure they'll probably be fixed pretty quickly. The other one is, though, that there's a few bugs that are actually important, like don't use an invalid severity level. If you try to do that, you will just break it. So I just point those out. There's a few other minor shortcomings, but you can read about them just to be aware of them real quick. But it'll otherwise generally work. But that being said, even though the docs appear to be from an older version, it's actually better now. It works way better than what the documentation says it should. You can use REST searches, or you can use historical searches. Both of those are perfectly fine. It will go and do the right thing. There's a few spare parameters you have to put in them in order to be able to scope them properly, because you can also scope it to either standalone or not standalone instances in case that's important for you. I pointed that out. That was the blue section. You can also use make results to mock up a lot of things. It works perfectly fine. Any valid search will work. So there's lots of ways to test things, lots of ways to do stuff, and it really does work okay. So there's a few tips and tricks. Tags and categories, just use them like Splunk uses them. I'll show you some examples, but look at their examples, look at what they use, try to follow that for the most part. Except, obviously, for like categories and things, add your own when it's appropriate. I've got a whole category I've made called checklist tests, and that makes it really easy to find these tests that I'm running. Include all the fields, even the optional ones. There are times when maybe you don't need a drill down or whatever it is, but definitely err on the side of trying to include them in all cases. Remember that I mentioned the first drill down is the only drill down. The others just don't work. And as far as I can tell, there's no required fields in the output. The docs are totally wrong on this. You can not include any fields. You can include any other fields you want. It doesn't really matter. Severity level is really close to being required, because if you don't include it at all, your tests will always be not applicable. So you should probably return a severity level in everything. But again, there's also the bug where if you return an invalid one, you can make it blank, that's fine. But if you return an invalid one, you'll break things. So just be a little careful. Demo time. First, where are all of these things found? You can get to them from your settings and the monitoring console. Then if you check your menu, you'll have health check items. Here indeed is the list of all of them. You can also see, when you want to edit them or anything, the details on them by going to Settings, Health Check Items. This is where I'm going to sit on this page. I have the other page set up elsewhere. So in here, I have two real options. You can see there's a bunch of Splunk provided ones and ones for our app, but those don't matter. What we care about are the ones I was building in the Checklist Test Items app. I could search for them that way, or since I happen to know they all have the word checklist in them from the tags, I could do them this way. Oh, got an extra one. So we'll use the method here. All right. We're going to go through these one by one. Most of them will be relatively quick and easy, and I'll just point out the interesting things. And then we'll go run them and see what they look like. We'll probably alternate back and forth. First, we're going to take a look at this one. All I did for this one, and you can download this entire thing from somewhere, place to be determined, but it'll be available. I'll wrap this app up and hand it out so you guys have all these as sort of frameworks to build from. This is really nothing more than one that I wrote all the words in that go with the descriptions so that you could see where they are, right? And then you'll see where they show up inside the UI. So this one really does nothing except to tell you where the different fields end up. We're going to go through, let's go through the tests first. We'll pick any one of them. What happens with no severity level at all? So in here, we do a make results. We do not create the severity level field. We just create some random other field, and well, we remove time from the make results. As I said, you always fill out everything. Sometimes it's rather silly. Let's see what this one does. So I'm going to cancel here. Everything should be loaded up, so I don't need to go. This pro tip for you, our app Canary, which is free to use internally, does have the Fresh Maker, which you can use right in its top menus, but you can use that to refresh individual things. It's much easier than the clunky or Splunk way to do this. So I've got it set on conf checklist. I can totally click the refresh button and it will just go reread things off disk and poke all the appropriate places in Splunk to make them show up. So here I've pulled up the health checks. I've filtered it down already to just my checklist tests. This is nice here because it actually in this side matches things instead of just being completely freeform. I like that. If you had created a separate category to find yours, you could do that, but category is kind of something different. You can see I threw all mine in data indexing. It didn't really matter for my purposes. Except of course for the one I was going to show you first, descriptions. This is where everything ends up being shown. Let's go ahead and run our health checks and we'll go through them. The first thing to note, 2 of them ended up being not applicable. One of them is descriptions as text because there's no severity level. Not applicable. Since there's none at all, it just says we're not going to use this. So here's where your things are, suggested action. I mean, most of these are pretty straightforward and you'd figure them out, but maybe it's useful to just see that once. So if we check our other one, you'll see again, when you don't include a severity level, just like the last time, it just doesn't have one, and so the test is not applicable. You can see though that I had created the field nothing with a value of, it works. And that shows up inside our results. So let's pop back over here. What will we do next? Duplicate instances. The docs at this point say that you cannot have duplicate instances. Instances is supposedly a special field. According to the docs, according to that spec file, it's a special field that should be set to host in most environments. And that gives you the clue of what it's for. It's really a drill down field, or what they envisioned back in the earlier days, what the drill down would go to. You would run these health checks and they would look and find problems, and then it would tell you which host you should go look at to fix. That is probably still a perfectly valid way to do this, but now they've made it a little more flexible, so you don't have to worry about having an instance in there. So they did say that you couldn't have duplicates. And so let's test that. So here's one. I do a make results and I eval a pair of A's for instance, and then make them multi-valued, MV expand them so that we have 2 rows. I create a severity level because I'm tired of it breaking and remove out a bunch of random extra fields that just don't need to be displayed. You'll notice I even put the drill down in here. So the syntax for the drill down is just like with the XML dashboard. You just put it inside $signs, and whatever field you've created in your search and that comes out the other end can be used as a drill down. Again, only the first one of those that you put in here will work, but you can use any of them. So we'll cancel there and let's go for their duplicate instances one. Here it is. Remember, I set the severity level to 1. This does point out that if you'll notice, 1 gives you failure text when it runs. So anyway, here's the results. Our severity level 1, our 2 instances, and you can see that if I click either one of them, it just does the right thing. We substituted our dollar instance right in there as per that. So that just ends up being the drill down that runs. All right, let's go back over here and see what's another good one to look at. No dollars in drill down. The docs do say that you are required to have a field in $signs in the drill down, but obviously it didn't really matter. I created the severity level at that point. No dollars in drill downs. Severity level of 2, so it just picked that up. You can set that to 0 and it would be no error at all. Everything is A-OK with this. But if you don't include any drill down, it doesn't bother it one bit. It works just fine. So we've checked duplicate instances. We've checked no dollars in drill downs. We'll just look at the severity 3 test real quickly. I really just put it in here so you could see. This is severity 3 error, 2 warning, 1 info. And this is 0 OK. These are where it's either missing or it's -1. Severity level test 3, severity 3 level test, whatever that is. Yep, nothing in here interesting. Just set the eval. Ooh, I almost drug a button into the thing. That's weird. What would it do? Oh my goodness. Well, I don't want to do that. Interesting. We should add that to the list, although this one isn't even aggravating. It's just more amusing. All right, anyway, so we eval severity level 3, which again, if you come out the other end of whatever SPL you have with the severity level 3, that's what it'll look like. For our last test, let's take a look at the multiple drill downs problem. In this case, I've built one. Relatively straightforward. I have evaled 3 different fields. Host is Angband, user of Melkor, and weapon is Balrogs. I've also created a severity level of 0 because I hate to see them show errors. And then all I do for the drill down is that simple eval and just show me what comes out the other side, right? So this is pretty straightforward here. Let's flip over and take a look at what it looks like. So here's our multiple drill downs test. And as you can see, the only one of these that is able to be drilled down upon is the first one. It didn't matter which order I had these in. Host isn't special in this case. It is simply the first one. You could tell they're actually there because if I click on this and do the drill down, you can see that it just completely ignores anything after the first one. So in addition to those tests, let's take a look at a real example. This one is not overly complex. It's relatively straightforward. I'm looking in actually for hosts that have contacted the system in the last 7 days, but that haven't contacted them in the last hour. You can see I use a couple of t-stats here. I penned in our 7-day and that. There's lots of ways to do this. If I would have thought harder, I'm sure I would have come up with the finding the last time it checked in, what the max time is in the index, and used a rel time against it. But I didn't. This is where my mind went first. In any case, by doing it this way, I know that if there are 2 rows, then we're okay because we have a row for at least 7 days ago and then one for the last 1 hour. If we have only 1 row, we know we're in error. So in that case, set our severity level and do some other things to make it look good. We also have a drill down that shows us some things. So let's go take a look at that. Here was our test. It says we were successful because it fell through to the 0. So we had an okay severity. And the drill down should work like this. You can find lots of these examples inside Splunk's provided Checklist.conf settings and items. They have quite a few of them. And there's also a lot of help out in the community that you can get if you need it in building more of those. For the most part, it's only the search that's the hard part. Everything else is relatively straightforward. But making sure it returns a result and returns the right severity level and is actually capturing the information you need can be the hard part. So for those of you out there developing your own apps, trying to provide them for customers, as I mentioned, we actually have a commercial app that does kind of live or die on whether a voice person, probably, because it's regarding calls, whether a voice person can get this stood up on their very first Splunk server on cast-off hardware they've begged off the server team or some random VM. And it kind of, as I said, it kind of lives and dies on whether they can get this to happen effectively and fairly quickly, or if there's anything wrong, they know where to go for help or what to do about it. So we've created a whole set of health checks as well. About 4 or 5 of them actually run on our homepage because they're super critical. Like, your data stopped coming in more than 5 hours ago. There's something broken. But the rest are, a little less critical most of the time. All right, as you can see, this is my test data on my test system on my poor beleaguered 2-core laptop. It gets several errors, some of which I have engineered to make sure that we are capturing certain errors when they happen. But for the most part, you can see some of the things we're testing for.
I was just providing these to give you guys ideas on doing this yourself in your own app. Certainly don't need to do anything this complex, but maybe you can make sure that your data is still coming in. These are also pretty easily adaptable to a turned off alert that you could also have set up so that they could turn on the alert themselves and say, yes, I'd like to be alerted when I haven't had any data in the last 6 hours. In any case, that's all I have for the demo.
Final thoughts. The first thing you should do is join a community. We can help. We have Slack channels. They are awesome. There's lots of people in there. There's thousands of channels. There's probably only 100 that are commonly used, but they're divvied up into various things. I don't believe there's a channel specifically for health checks. It would probably just go into general search because that's really the problem. But, maybe we'll make a channel for that if there's enough people who need specific help on health checks themselves. We're friendly that way. You can also look at all of the health checks that Splunk wrote. They're all over the system. Go to your MC and poke around in there and look at some of those, or open up the files. Take a look. Use those as templates and patterns for the things you need to do to check your own data. And finally, thanks for watching. I hope this was useful to you.